guys. So we are on our way to breakfast, and then we're going to our first parallel event of the day. And it's going to be on human trafficking, so we're really excited because that's an issue that is very important to us.
It's sponsored by UNICEF, so that should be really informed, and we're excited to listen.
We're excited because it's not raining today. It's actually pretty nice out. It's very loud, but it's really nice out, and nice brisk weather, so we're excited for the day.
Alright, see you guys. Bye.
Hi guys! So we just got done with our first parallel event of the day. It was probably the one that we thought was the coolest. It talked about like various girls or groups of girls around the world and the challenges they faced, and it kind of went off of the theme of like you're only as strong as your weakest link, or you're only as strong and there's only as much equality as like the weakest girl or the last girl is the term they used a lot. So they did this through 4 different people. Each gave an example of how they see like the last girl and like in society, and how without justice for that last girl there is no justice for anyone. So the first woman, she focused on girls in Sri Lanka, and specifically one girl who was in this village, and she was raped by this man who said he was going to marry her, but he didn't. And because of this rape and like the stigma that there is around rape in Sri Lanka, she had no support system. She couldn't go back to her village because she would be seen as like this huge outlier, and like she just like was this outcast, and she was the last girl in that village. So they talked about how without justice for that one specific girl, there would be no justice for anyone in Sri Lanka.
The next 2 speakers both focused in the United States. The first one talked about a specific girl in a low-income area in Los Angeles. This girl that she talked about was unable to get to school because she couldn't afford a bus pass, and the school district, you either have to drive, you have to walk, or you have to get a bus pass, and she can't afford that. So then she would get these truancy tickets. She couldn't pay the truancy tickets because she couldn't even get a bus pass because she couldn't get to school. And it's this kind of cycle of poverty that happens. And these she's specifically talking about African American girls and how they're at such a disadvantage in their community because they're not given the resources that they need to prosper, and that when they're born into this and they really can't do anything because of their race, and it's just this cycle of poverty. And then the second speaker, who also focused in the United States, was from Georgia, and he talked again about African American youth, and he touched a bit on human trafficking especially, which was really nice to hear because all of us have a real interest in that from doing the Model UN earlier this year. And so that was really nice, and he talked about different lenses of minority groups and how to really focus, and in order again to solve these big issues of women's rights, especially in impoverished and minority areas and groups, we have to really specifically look at them and see what their challenges are and look specifically at these groups, so that it's important to make a change.
Yeah, and so the last lady was talking specifically about the caste system and the lower classes of the system, and how their definition of justice is so different than ours because they're still fighting for basic things like the right for information and stuff like that. So her story was in this village, one young lady died, and the cops wouldn't even tell them how it happened, and so they said she was poisoned and she committed suicide, but they all knew that she was raped and killed because she was about to get her license to become a teacher. And so like her main message was that our definition of justice is so different depending on where we live because we're all fighting for different things, and so that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And that was in India, by the way, the caste system.
Yeah.
India.
And also it was really interesting too because we kind of all had a realization while we were in there. We were sitting next to a group of young ladies who were being a little disrespectful, like on their phones, laying on the ground.
The event was really cramped. There was not a lot of space.
Yeah.
We were standing the whole time, and this group was sitting on the floor, and so they kind of thought they were hidden. Some of them were sleeping. Like, it was a lot of disrespect. And I think one thing we all noticed was our presentation really matters, how we represent ourselves. We're all dressed nice. We're all being completely respectful. We realize how important that is in our reflection of who we are as people.
Yeah, so yeah, we learned a lot from that event, definitely not only just about women's rights throughout the world, but about presentation, obviously. So it was really cool. We're excited. We're going to go to a side event now about the Philippines, which we're really excited because of our work with Kimberly Melitas. It's kind of a issue or idea place that's close to home.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work with them, and we also learned a little bit about them in the Model United Nations because we worked with that country or delegate in the conference, so that was cool too.
Yeah, so we're excited.
All right, see you guys. Bye.
So I just got out of a really cool side event. It was about the Ebola virus and specifically how it affected Sierra Leone. It was really cool because first it kind of focused on how women were most specifically affected. They said 56% of Ebola victims were women. This is because they were the ones that were working in the hospitals and stuff, so they were the most exposed. And then they kind of talked about the economic problems that resulted because of the Ebola virus, which is a side of Ebola that I had never really thought about before. But things like they couldn't trade across borders anymore, and they had to close down all of their schools, just like all these very big economic repercussions because of the Ebola virus. And then the most moving part of the side event was they actually had a victim of Ebola come in and just kind of tell her story. She was one of the people who was working in like a healthcare facility, and she was helping treat Ebola victims. So that is how she got infected. And she talked about the extreme stigma around Ebola victims in Sierra Leone. Things like she would send money with her children to go to like a supermarket or like any sort of shop to pick something up for her, and the sellers would deny them because it was Ebola money. So there were just like these extreme stigmas around her and all other victims, of course. And it was really moving because after she was done speaking, they gave a standing ovation and she began to cry and everyone else began to cry, and it just showed the magnitude of this issue. Obviously being in America, we're so far away, or we feel so far away from this issue, but it's such a big deal and it's so important, and it makes all of those dumb Ebola jokes even more dumb and very awful, because these are very real people. As I just saw with my own two eyes, these are very real and very heartbroken people, and it was just like really moving. Yeah, it was the most moving presentation I've ever seen. It was really cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Hey guys, we just got done with a session entitled Armed Forces and the Role of Women in Jordan. It was really interesting. It talked a lot about how women are really oppressed in this nation and they really don't have much of a say in anything. And it was really cool because it was such a regional approach, talking specifically in Jordan with the war they've had and so much conflict. It was a really interesting way to hear their stories. There's a lot of different people. There was like a panel. There was a doctor. There was I think a professor. There was a filmmaker, and there was a lot of other interesting voices that were heard. And really, the consensus was that just women don't have a say in much, and that patriarchy is really strong there. But in order to solve these issues, they want to get legislation in place, and they really want to get minority voices that haven't been able to tell their stories a chance to share. And so that was really interesting.
Yeah, so two of the things that we kind of took out of it, one of the ladies talked a lot about youth and how we always say we want youth involved, but we never do anything about it. So like in the room we were in, Abby and I were the only people probably under 18 in the entire room, and that was their point. Like, we always say we need youth, but we never do it. And to solve this issue specifically, we're going to need to start from younger generations because of like such a deep culture in Jordan. And the other one that someone talked about was getting men and boys involved, because especially in Jordan, where men have a lot of say and power, we're not going to be able to fight against them alone. So we really need to get men and boys involved so that they can start making more changes as well. So yeah, it was really interesting.
Hi! So it's raining again, if you can't tell. We are on our way to the UN. We're going to go to the morning briefing today to see what is being passed or not being passed in the General Assembly. So that's going to be really cool. Hi guys! So we just got out of the morning briefing.
One thing that we did focus on, they had a person from the World Trade Organization there, and she was really interesting. She really helped from talking about like a worker's perspective, making sure there's a space for minorities to make sure they're able to advocate for their own rights, and there's a safety component involved in that, and making sure they have space to really grow as people in the labor force. So that's really cool and interesting.
Other who we met earlier this week asked a really interesting question about making sure that within unions there's no racism happening in certain areas of the world, and so that was really cool too.